Hello, Marfa. How are we doing? Holy cannoli, look at this crowd. I am flattered and humbled that you've all made it out here today. It's okay, yeah, don't be shy. Come on in, take a seat, take a seat. Okay, so a little bit of background on this. I think some of you I recognize from last year when I gave a talk sort of about taking into account the last then like 4 years of generative art and thinking about moving forward in the space and how we might have to think in order to do that. And so when I was flattered to be asked back here by our hosts at Art Blocks and OpenSea, I wanted to expand on something I was talking about last year, which is the importance of criticism and critique in developing our sensibility as artists, but also our sensibility as collectors and connoisseurs and contributors to this space. And I thought, well, how to do that, right? Because I don't want to just come up here. I'm not going to stand up here and criticize a bunch of art like an asshole. And you don't have to do that anyway, because critique is not finding all of the problems with an artwork. Critique is simply the act of deep looking at an artwork. And while you are deep looking, or after you have looked deeply, it's the process of thinking deeply about an artwork. And I thought, well, you know what would be fun is what if we all do some deep looking together? So, would you guys like to spend the next 50 minutes or so looking at art with me? Can we look at some art together? So let's do it. Like let's just look at art together. So I made this talk, which is somewhat bombastically called 5 Perfect Artworks. But in my mind and like in my heart, it's not really much of an exaggeration. I just have chosen 5 artworks that I love looking at and I love thinking about. And in most cases, I've been looking at or thinking about these artworks for years. And I thought maybe we could do it together and reveal something about deep looking and deep thinking about artworks. So here's what you're going to get. I'm going to give you one last chance to head to the exits. I'm going to throw up basically 5 artworks, and I'm just going to talk about each of these artworks for 10 minutes. And we'll see if it's fun. We'll see if it's interesting. And if not, don't worry. They won't have me back next year. All right, so let's get started. 5 perfect artworks. Number 4 will blow your mind. Number 1. This is a piece by the sculptor Brian Jungen called Shapeshifter. And I think I first saw this piece, I can't remember when I first saw it, but I think I would have seen it at the National Gallery of Canada. And over time it has become, I think, one of, if not my absolute favorite artwork that I've seen that's created in my lifetime. And I come back to it time and time again when I think about the things that I want an artwork to do. So let's look at this. And let's look at it real shallow first before we look at it deep. This is a sculpture of a whale. Well, not quite. It's a sculpture of a whale skeleton. And I think it matters that it's a whale skeleton. But if we get a little bit closer, when we get drawn into it, and we are drawn into it because it's a beautiful form, it's a seductive form, when we're drawn into it, we realize that this sculpture of a whale is made out of plastic deck chairs. Can you see that? And so all identical. These are the kind of plastic deck chairs. You get these at Walmart or Best Buy or whatever, right? When I was talking last year, and I was talking about some of the kind of like 5 simple tricks that artists have used to make like modern art, I talked about you start off with a module that has some kind of symbolic value. You assemble the module into a form that also has symbolic value, and you make sure that the symbolism of the form has some kind of relationship, either a relationship of amplification or a relationship of friction and tension with the module. Bingo bango. All right, we did it. That's like the recipe for a good chunk of modern art. And it's kind of become, it's become a little bit of a recipe these days. But this was the first time that I would have seen this, and I would have been at the right age to see it. And so I've got the statue of I've got the whale skeleton, and I've got the deck chairs. And then I start to think about the relationship between these pieces, all right? So there's a whale. The whale is dead. When a whale dies, it becomes a skeleton. When a whale, the whale skeleton becomes a fossil. Over the course of millions and millions of years, fossils become petroleum that then become extracted from the earth and turned into, among other things, plastic deck chairs. And then the plastic deck chairs are reconstituted into the sculpture of a whale, which is already dead. And when I think about this, I realize this isn't a sculpture of a whale, and it's not a sculpture of deck chairs. This is a sculpture of a process, an artificial process, that has taken hundreds of millions of years to produce. And I think that's really quite beautiful. And I enjoy coming back to this piece. I enjoy looking at it because it is beautiful, and I enjoy thinking about it because it is profound. Once we go through the cycle of the whale to the skeleton to the fossil, to the petroleum, to the plastic, to the deck chair, there's a jumping off point if you want to take it. Maybe it hasn't been reconstituted as a whale. Maybe it's been reconstituted as art. Maybe it's not a whale at all, it's just a sculpture. And now it exists ossified, suspended in time forever. Maybe actually it's escaped that loop, that cycle that I thought it was representing. I don't really know. And I like not knowing. And some days I think it's one way, and some days I think it's the other way. And so I love this piece. And that's why I love it. So that's Shapeshifter by Brian Jungen. Here's another view where you can see the deck chairs better and the various modules that constitute it. Brian Jungen lives just outside of Vancouver. He is he's well known for this other kind of artwork. These sculptures are actually more famous of his, and if you're familiar with his art at all, you might know these instead of the whale sculptures, because I think there's only 3 of those whale sculptures in the world. This is another example of that type of art that I enjoy thinking about. These are like indigenous masks. These created out of Air Jordan shoes, because Air Jordan shoes are, a large part of a kid's identity. They certainly were when I was a kid, right? They've kind of overtaken the iconography that used to be associated with indigenous tribes. There's ways that we define ourselves. So these are other pieces that use that same principle. And I think what I really like about this is that these pieces also, they don't really stick to a specific editorial position. I wouldn't say that these are particularly environmentalist or anti-capitalist pieces. Like, they're merely statements of fact. This is a thing that has happened. And it is a thing that has happened across a broad scale of time. And that's it. It kind of like resists being disaster porn. It resists being preachy. Again, it's a 100 million year process captured in one sculpture. I think that's quite beautiful. Oh, shoot. How are we doing for time? Oh, good. Okay. All right. I'm right on. 10 minutes per. 10 minutes per. Okay. Number 2. Actually, I forget how I ordered these. Let's see what this one is. What is the number 2 perfect artwork? Oh, here we go. Here we go. Here we go. This might also be my favorite artwork that's ever been made in my lifetime. There are a number of contenders for these. How did I see these? I think these were made in 2015, but first exhibited in 2016. And I bumped into these artworks completely randomly. I was visiting New York City, and this was back before I visited New York City a lot, and going to New York City was a special occasion. As I was wandering around Chelsea on the gallery opening night, probably mostly just hoping to get as much free wine as I could, and maybe if I was lucky, I would get to see a good artwork while I was out in Chelsea. And this is a really valid reason to go out to galleries and discover art, by the way. Go for the free wine, and don't stick around unless you're extremely moved by the art. So I walked into the opening of this exhibition, and once again, I'll say it. I like art that's beautiful. Yeah, I'll admit it. I'm man enough to admit it. I walk into the gallery, and there were 36 of these large format photographs. They look like this. They're beautiful. They're just beautiful. Each one is a depiction of a bouquet, and they're presented in this very sort of like matter-of-fact librarian style. And I will admit, I was not familiar with this artist when I first walked into the gallery. I had no idea who Taryn Simon was. I had no idea that 3 years prior to this, she'd done one of the most significant 7-on-7 projects with Rhizome. I didn't know anything. Just thought these were really beautiful photographs of sculptures, and I wondered, what would compel somebody to make 32 of these, and why do they look the way they are? And there's a clue here for me, and this is really important. This is a really important thing that I've learned about making art and what I want from art when I'm looking at it deeply. The framing of these pieces is really important, and inside of the frames, there's quite a bit of text. And it's clear, like, it's not the wall text. There's like the title of the artwork and, who paid for it and the date that it was made. It's something else, but it's really small. And now, so there's a really good thing that's happening here, the way that Taryn Simon is forcing us to look at her artwork. And we're going to come back to this and talk about this a little bit more. But a really good artwork like this, it pushes the viewer around. A really good artwork will push you around. You stand back because these are big compositions. You move forward. The artwork moves a person around, and it engages in scale in that way. Not by becoming bigger and smaller, but by making the viewer want to change their vantage point. So anyway, all I know right now, these are some really nice pictures of flowers. This is not in the perfect artwork category yet. We haven't got there yet. So I get a little bit closer to look at what is in the text. These are the, this is the text that's in the frame. And because it's in the frame, I know this must be a really important piece of the art. The title of that artwork was Finding Pursuant to Section 662 of the Foreign Assistance Act of 1961, as amended, concerning operations in foreign countries other than those intended solely for the purpose of intelligence collection, White House, Washington, D.C., United States, 1981. United States President Ronald Reagan reauthorized and expanded a classified presidential finding granting material support to Afghanistan insurgents fighting the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan. All of the pictures of flowers have similar texts in their frame. They all describe some kind of international treaty that had been signed at some point in the last 50 years. And now my brain's working. Now I'm thinking, well, what the fuck does that have to do with flowers? This is some wild shit. So I keep going back and forth between that text and this composition. There's another thing going on. At the end of every piece of text, it lists the species of flowers that are presented in the photograph. So this must be really important as well. And it also says where they are sourced from. This one's easy. They all come from the Netherlands, but other plaques will say really, really far-flung places in the world. So now the gears start turning. There was a genre of painting in like the 17th century Netherlands called imaginary bouquet painting. Now this is, you probably know this. You probably know that the Dutch, they loved themselves some flowers back in the day. I think we've heard that metaphor applied to this community in the past. What you didn't know, and you're going to love this, they also loved imaginary pictures of flowers. They loved that shit. And what they would do in these imaginary bouquet flowers is like, okay, sure, you can have a bouquet, but if it's a painting of flowers, you can have different species of flowers that don't bloom at the same time or that are from different parts of the world, and we can put them all in the same bouquet in our painterly imagination. And that was the appeal of these things. This is why they're called imaginary bouquet paintings, right? And so you realize that all of these photographs are recalling imaginary bouquet paintings. These are things that, in the 17th and 18th century, the Dutch would have been really excited to see in a painting, but now they're real. These are photographs. And so what this series is called Paperwork in the Will of Capital. I ended up buying the catalog for this piece, and I realized that a major part of this piece was about how she could make all of these previously imaginary representations of nature manifest through the miracle of global markets, baby. Like, we can do it. There is this central like flower market thing in the Netherlands, and it imports all the flowers from all the parts of the world, and it distributes them, and you get them overnight before they fall out of bloom, and you can create these imaginary bouquets. And the texts that are described in the plaques are, again, more instances of how we have created a global world. They're all texts about trade agreements and shared defense agreements. They're all the conditions through which this is possible, through which it's only possible to make a photograph like this because things like this happened. And so where the exact choice of flowers came from is, oh darn, I didn't get a slide of this, but in the catalog, there are photographs of where all these treaties got signed. One of the, like, so, you know, this one, I mean, and some of them are dumb. This was a treaty in which, I think this is the one where Canada Post decided that they would, like, help Liberia rebuild their postal system. But whatever, it's global trade. And there's always a photograph of the Prime Minister or the President or the Secretary of Defense or whatever signing, and there's a fancy table, and before us is what Taryn Simon calls the stagecraft of capitalism. There's always a bouquet of flowers on the table. And ironically enough, that bouquet of flowers tends to be what would have been considered an imaginary bouquet, something that shouldn't be possible without the miracle of global trade. So that's a long cycle. It's a long process. And that's a reason why I've kept this artwork in my head for however long it's been, whatever, the 10 years it's been since I've seen it, or whatever. And I think it's just, it's perfect. One of the things that I talked about in my talk last year is that another thing that another common trait of art that I really enjoy is art that describes the absurd process of its own making. And always making an artwork is kind of absurd. Like, it's kind of a ridiculous thing to do. Like, we all got better things to do today. And it's kind of a miracle that anyone decides that they would make art. And so artwork that can describe that process and really accurately look at the systems that make it possible, I love holding them in my head. So that's Taryn Simon's paperwork and The Will of Capital. What was this? What was I even looking at here? I don't even know what this video is. Oh yeah, I don't want to talk about this. So no, I included that just because I said, when Adam asked me to come and do this, I told him, I was like, yeah, I'll do a talk again, but the rule is that I won't talk about myself. And so I just want to talk about, other artwork that I thought was really nice. But I was having dinner last night. We were talking about scale, and I wanted to come back and make a couple points. Both of those artworks, one of the things that they have in common is that phenomenon I just described. They push you in and they pull you out, and they reveal different things at the different viewer scales, right? And that's, so obviously, like, I think that seems really obvious in something like Shapeshifter. It's a whale at this scale. It's deck chairs at this scale. And with Taryn Simon's pieces, again, makes sure that text is really small, so it only reveals, like, you literally have to cut out the picture in order to get the context. That's a very smart thing to do. To apply this to digital art often has challenges, I think, addressing scale in a meaningful way. A lot of times when we think about scale in digital art, like, we're really just talking about, is it big? Is it big? Hey, can I get a bigger screen here? This thing would look amazing projected on a whole wall. Which, like, true, yeah, it would. It would look amazing projected on a wall. That's great, do it. Like, definitely do it, it works. But that's not, like, actually thinking about and wrestling with the issue of scale. Digital art can struggle with this. Certainly, smarter people than me have figured out solutions. But you're stuck with, first of all, there's a kind of, like, constraint on, like, your maximum minimum scale. Even the bigger the screen, it will have a pixel pitch. And that's just different from a painting, right? I always say, I like to look at a Rembrandt painting more than I like to look at a Jackson Pollock painting. Because if I ever want to see a Jackson Pollock painting, I'll just stand really, really close to a Rembrandt. And but that's a thing that wouldn't work if it was like a digital representation of the painting, right? And so you have that, and then that's even before getting into the fact that, a lot of times we're like, with digital art, we know people are going to be looking at it in their desk chair, and a screen, and even a screen, the apparatus you present on, suggests a certain distance. Obviously, I'm a big believer in placing the couch down in front of the viewing area of a digital artwork. So it's tough. So scale in digital art, it's really difficult to think about scale in the spatial dimension. And so I just want to say that one of the things that I think that digital art can do, and one of the ways that I try to incorporate scale into art, is to think about scale not in the spatial dimension, but in the dimension of time. All right? I can't reveal different things when a person stands really close or really far away from my piece, but I can reveal different things when a person spends a small amount of time and applies micro attention to my artwork. And then I can reveal something totally different when a person spends a long amount of time and has macro attention with my artwork. And so I think about scale as something, I love these artworks because they do spatial scale. And these are all ideas that we have to figure out how to adapt into digital artwork. And that's how I like to think about that. Okay, moving on. Artwork number 3. My third perfect artwork. So this is a fun one because I decided I wanted to talk about the last artwork I saw that blew my freaking mind, because it was the one that was freshest in my memory. And I think it's high time we started talking about digital art, right? Time to start talking about great digital artwork. So this was, man, oh man, I had a great trip seeing this piece. I saw this just last month in Budapest. We're going to do something a little different. I don't have any slides of this. So you're going to have to just listen to me talk about and describe an art. But it's not my fault. It's not that I didn't prepare. There just is no documentation of this artwork. This is a digital artwork that defies documentation. I was in Budapest last month, and I was at an exhibition, and there was an installation by the artist Cory Hentschläger. I don't know if any of you are familiar with his work, but here's what he does. I'm going to try to describe this piece for you. I walk up to a black box room, and you have to surrender your cell phone. You got to leave your cell phone with an attendant at the desk. And then you go through one of those blackout screens. And then you go through another blackout screen. And then you go through a third blackout screen, like just to make sure that the room you're entering is pitch black. Like you can't see your hand in front of you black. And it's just black, and Cory Arcangel, he's Austrian artist. So imagine you've got your classic kind of European techno drone. You know what I'm talking about. Your kind of Einstürzende Neubauten inspired background noise there, and then all of a sudden, bam, 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 these flashes of light in front of you. You wouldn't have known this because it's pitch black. But there are some, what I'm guessing are pretty high definition and really powerful LED screens in the front of the room. And he's programmed about between like a third and a half second of animation. And it might just be like a series of lines, bam, 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 across the room in 3 seconds. And now, you've all probably had this experience. Somebody points a flashlight in your eye, and it kind of burns into your like rods and cones, and then there's just the ghost of an image there. And so the art is not the bam, bam, bam. It's that now you're stuck for 20 seconds in the pitch black with just these phantoms. And they're not in front of you. They're in like the jelly in your head. And that in and of itself would be astonishing. Like it's there's a school of thought of philosophy is closely aligned with certain art movements, called phenomenology. This idea that art really happens kind of inside the physiology of the perceiver. And we don't have to go into all that. This isn't an art history lesson, but like this is that executed perfectly. But like it's not just that, oh, great concept, great idea. Okay, like the art literally happens inside your head. That alone, like that would be good, but this artist, he was so in control of this medium because he's worked on it for years and years, and he's lost a lot of his hearing from making too much loud industrial music to play at his art raves. and that he can choreograph some kind of dance that happens in the vitreous jelly of your skull because he understands that, okay, if I blast you with a circle at this intensity, and then a square at slightly lower intensity, and then line, 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 those after images will decay at different rates in your head as they're burned inside your head. And he's animating inside your head, all right? Because these lights have different intensities and different periods of exposure. And it's just astonishing to see somebody do something different and keep on taking it further and further until they have complete mastery over something that I'd never seen before. So that was the last artwork that I saw that totally blew my mind. And I thought this was perfect. It would have been worth flying to another continent just to get my 20 minutes with this. And I also thought it was a really nice way in this talk to introduce digital art. Because another thing that is astonishing and heroic and also kind of sad about this artwork is that, I mean, this is only possible through digital technology. And yet, he can't document, like he doesn't, there's no Instagram post of it. Even if you go to his website, there are some like kind of vaguely representational photos like this. But this isn't what it looks like. Obviously, this isn't what it looks like. And so he gave a lecture at the Université Moholy-Nagy the next day. And I went to the lecture, and I asked him a question. And I said, Kurt, you know, how does it feel? Most of the time, you know, we've seen this explosion in digital art, and it's largely been made possible by the distribution rails that have been afforded through new digital technology, right? We're all sharing art on Twitter and on Instagram or whatever, and like you've used digital technology to make your art, that's great, but you're getting none of the benefit of it being on Instagram, right? Like everything, you gotta be like, man, you gotta be like a Yayoi Kusama selfie trap if you're gonna make it an art in this day and age. And he just said to me, he said, yeah, I know, I can't, like, I got no social media presence, I can't share the work, and I'm broke, you know, and that sucks. But I love that. And it just really made me think the importance of, I think not having exposure to this on social media allowed me to look, it just allowed me to look more deeply when I was with the piece. And I think it's also a really great reminder, it certainly was a great reminder for me, that you can decouple the kind of experiences that you can create with technology from the distribution rails that everyone's naturally guiding you onto, right? Not all great digital art can be on your Twitter feed, can be in your Instagram feed, could be an NFT. And I loved being a part of that. And that was the last really great artwork that I saw. Oh, I'm doing good for time. Okay, number 4. I don't remember what was number 4. Oh, this is a great one. Love this one. Okay. Number 4, perfect artwork. This is a piece by the artist Robert Young. It's called Hurt Me Plenty. Hold on, should I get my notes for this one? I don't need my notes for this one. Let me start with this. Let me start by saying, I have no idea what's going on here, okay? I have no idea what's going on here, but we're sticking with digital art, all right? Let's talk our way through this. Okay, so this is a video game that I downloaded from itch.io, and so it looks like, all right, my phone rang, and I answered the phone, and now I had to move my control. See, I'm trying to figure out how to use my controller. I'm not really sure. That's what I got. Okay, controller goes up and down, and I shake hands with this guy. I don't really know what those things on his arm are all about. I don't really know that. This is like an early playthrough. I wasn't really sure what to expect here. I'm shaking his hand a lot. I don't know how long I'm supposed to shake his hand for, but there's like a meter up here, and maybe I got to fill it up with handshaking. I don't know. No, I don't know. Now there's this icon. I don't know. What? Okay, is this a butt? No. Okay. All right. There's like a jock strap. I'm doing the handshaking. I finished the progress bar. Okay, good. Okay, all right. I got to the title screen. This is really great. And what I'm giving you now is pretty close to like what my actual experience here was. Okay, so now, all right, I made it. Oh my God. Okay, so there's some kind of timer, and okay, okay. So I figured it out on the controller. I gotta spank his bum. And there are these icons happening, but I don't know. Oh, okay. Okay, then there's an icon, and I click the button. Okay, now we're shoulder rubbing. Okay, we're shoulder rubbing. Okay. And I don't know how much shoulder rubbing there's going to be. So I should say while we're shoulder rubbing, I'll talk more about the delightful feeling of not knowing what was going on. I don't know what's going on here on two levels. One of the reasons why I don't know what's going on here is because obviously I didn't encounter this artwork in an art gallery. And art galleries kind of always gives you a little bit of confidence that you like know what's going on. Okay, like no matter what's happening, no matter how weird it is, whether it's a room full of dog feces or a guy masturbating under the floorboards, you at least know you're in an art gallery. You're probably safe, and this is art. But I don't really know what's going on here because I didn't encounter this artwork in an art gallery. I downloaded it from itch.io onto my gaming PC, and I was, and I had it in my home. And I think that lack of context really worked. It really shaped how I was going to be looking at this artwork. And we're just about here, and I'll talk about the second reason why I don't know what's going on in a second. And so, okay, so now I finished the shoulder rubbing. There are more icons here. And now I'm back at this thing. All right, so it looks like now I'm going to try to, I got to try to call him. Okay, so I'm calling back, I think the guy I'm calling is the same, the spanking guy and the shoulder rubbing guy. And you call on the phone. I'm going to be quiet and let this moment land. And there's no answer. And you call again. And you'll wait. And I'll think, oh my God, really? Am I gonna have to I can't skip past this loading bar? And see, I went to the menu. I went to the menu to see if I could skip this, if I was caught in some kind of loading thing. I wasn't. There's no way to skip it. I gotta just go and I gotta try to call him again. And now we got a text. Ooh. And then it's over, and then there's nothing else you can do. And then it's over. There's nothing else that you can do. And so I guess I messed it up. I did it wrong. I don't really know. I don't know what I did wrong. I don't know if I did the spanking wrong, and I don't know if I did the handshake wrong. I don't know if I did the shoulder rubbing wrong, but I did something wrong, and I'm locked out from having another interaction. And so Robert Young has said that this game, he identifies himself. His his bio is great on his website. He makes surprisingly popular games about gay culture. And he, described this as like an educational BDSM simulator. And he talks about this as a game about the ways that the BDSM community codifies care, right? And codifies its relationships. And which I think is just kind of a perfect message to be trying to send in an interactive artwork, right? In interactive artworks, like video games, they're all about, okay, you understand what is the pattern, you understand what is the goal, you understand what are the rules of engagement inherent in the pattern that get you to the goal, and you do it. And so I also, I didn't know what was going on here because I am, I'm not saying this because I'm proud of it. I am not part of the BDSM community. I don't know anything about it. But now I know that's okay because it was called it an educational game. And I think what I loved about this piece and the fact that I did not have the context of an art gallery going into it contributed to this feeling is that, I was just transported inside of a culture, inside of a situation, which I did not know about, which I am not native to, and was kind of left to figure it out. And the art, like the engagement with the artwork, leads me to this sense of confusion, trying to understand the terms of engagement, which I suspect is exactly the insight on the community that Robert Young was trying to talk about, given the short, like, it's not like I didn't read books and books and books about this. I read like the one statement that came with the game, right? That, oh yes, it's about how confusing it is navigating these communities that are always trying to codify and formalize how people are to engage with each other. And the lesson that I take away from this piece is, and I'll do a little bit of critique here. I don't want to say like too many negative things, but there's been, I think, a trend in the art world, maybe in the last like 10, 15 years, where this is kind of repeating tactic in the art world, which is to take a subculture or some kind of technique, symbolism. Actually, it's usually better if it's a person, a representative of a marginalized community, right, or subculture, and then just boop, pick it up, put it in the gallery. Look what we did, right? We elevated that, all right? And we've created a conversation around this. And I don't always agree with that. And I think that, first of all, it's presumptuous in the sense of feeling that, like, oh, picking your culture up from where it was and placing it inside this white cube somehow validates the culture, and now we're all being generous, open-minded people. I think that that technique only works if you go in with the preconception that being in between four white walls, like, somehow makes your life better, like somehow validates something. And I think that's a really dangerous preconception. And what I liked about this piece is the way that it did the opposite. Instead of, because you can imagine the edgy art gallery version of this, which is to like, and so you won't believe, like, this artist, and he like built a sex club inside the MoMA, and you can go and like, you can like see the leather daddies, and they're like spanking people. Like, I think that that is a strategy that I see a lot. But this strategy of doing the opposite, we're just going to take you out of this, wherever you are. I'm at my home right now, and I'm doing this on my couch, and I'm going to put you into a simulation of this. And I'm not going to let you feel smart about it. I'm not going to let you feel like you figured anything out about this culture because you downloaded a game. That's honest. And that's interesting. And what a cool way to make me feel when I'm engaging with an artwork. And I don't get a lot of artworks that do this. And that's why that's one of my favorite artworks I've encountered in my lifetime. Oh my goodness, we're doing so well for time. Okay, so now, here's a challenge. I couldn't decide on piece number 5. I made a 5A and a 5B. I couldn't decide. I'm going to decide right now. Okay, why not? I'm going to do this one. Another digital art piece. I'm going to do this because it's digital artwork. And this is, by the way, when I say like 5 perfect artworks, man, here's the thing about this talk and what I was doing. And I hope this is fun. I hope it's fun for us to look at art together. You're all too polite to say if it weren't. But it's like, I'm not saying these are the best art. These aren't the top 5 artworks of all time. I'm not saying these are like the 5 most culturally significant artworks of my lifetime, to use this weekend's meme. They're just 5 pieces that I love looking at and that I have a special relationship with, right? And this is how I look at them. And when we go through this, I guess what I would challenge everybody else to do, everybody in our space, is take your favorite artworks and see if you can just talk about them for 10 minutes. Talk about what's great about them, what's great about how they make you feel, without saying historic, or culturally relevant or anything. Just talk about what they do, what they look like. And so this is a pretty dumb artwork. I don't think he'd mind me saying this. But that I just had a wonderful relationship with it because of how I chose to engage with it, right? So I'll tell you the story about this piece. This is a piece by Cory Arcangel. So that's a name that I feel like a lot of people know here. And this is a piece that is probably not very well known because it's really not a major artwork. And I saw this, he published this in a journal in like 2013. He was making these like little zines and they would have kind of like instructions for like scripts that would be his artworks and stuff like this. This is a really dumb one. And you can see it's only like, whatever, I guess 33 lines of code. And it's an Apple script that he wrote. And this Apple script is supposed to turn on Spotify every night between 7 p.m. and run until 5. Oh, shit, I do wish we had audio now. I'm really sorry. And run until 5 a.m. the next morning and play Like a G6 by Far East Movement on repeat, okay, for whatever that is, 9 hours every night. And connect to your Facebook so that anybody who's looking at your profile would see that you're just a dude who listens to Far East Movement like a G6 for 9 hours straight every night, like instead of sleeping or something. And do people know this song? It's so good. We'll listen to it afterwards. Maybe that could be our exit music from here. And so I saw this in the journal, and I was kind of laughing about it. And at some point, I told my wife about it. I was like, man, this guy did this crazy thing. This is kind of funny. Eh? It's dumb. It's kind of funny. And and then I never thought about it again. I never really thought about it again until like it was like 2.5 years ago. I think maybe 2.5 years ago. I was driving around with my wife, and she said, out of the blue, she said, "You remember that artist you told me about that one time who made that Like a G6 artwork?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, I haven't thought about that in that old son of a bee sting. I haven't thought of him in nigh on 10 years. I hope he is well." And I was like, I meant to do that. I meant to install that Apple script, but like I never got around to it. So I do not, like I've never met, I still have never met Cory Arcangel. I'd never spoken to him. But like, so out of the blue though, I was like, you know what, no time like the present. I'm gonna email him and ask him if I can do this. But I also wanted to ask him for permission to change the artwork, because like I don't use Facebook, because I'm like not that old, right? And so I asked him, I just emailed his like info at Cory Arcangel account, and I said, hey, is it okay if I do your artwork, but I change it so it shows on my Discord instead of Facebook? Because like nobody uses Facebook anymore. And a week or two passed, but eventually got back to me. He's like, oh, that's a really like fun idea. Please go ahead and do that. That's whatever. So I did it, and I didn't tell anybody that I was doing it, right? I just and the Apple script actually is the same, because your Discord will your Discord will automatically read Spotify. And I ran this thing for like 3 weeks or so by myself. And I never told a soul, but I considered it like this is my exhibition, and I curated this thing. And and nobody ever commented on it. Like nobody ever noticed. But I knew that every single night, all right, and actually would get annoying because it actually plays the song. So like when I left my computer, I would like have to put it on mute because it was gonna run and it was gonna play Like a G6 by Far East Movement every night. And this is like 2.5 years ago, and and I think you all probably have felt something else. You all get to that point where it just. This whole I love you all. I love everybody. But sometimes this whole thing, it's a bit much sometimes, isn't it? the Twitter timeline, the feuds, the floor prices, all that stuff. And just for 3 weeks, I had this little digital art project, and it wasn't mine, so I could just enjoy it. But it was in front of me. It was a part of my world, and nobody else knew about it. And I would never tweet about its floor price, and I would never like shill it or pamp it on Twitter. And it genuinely made me happy every single day when I was like at my most like burnt out on the space. And that's like, oh darn, I forgot the slide. And then, and that was, so again, I'm not saying it's the best artwork, but I chose to have a relationship with it in a certain way that meant something to me. And I stopped doing it after it started getting like obviously really annoying. But that was okay. By then I'd gotten what I needed out of it. Until then finally, at the end of the year, my Spotify Wrapped came. And guess what is my #1 tune? for 2023. And that was another nice little way. So I guess that's not so much deep looking and deep thinking about a piece as it is just having a really private and personal engagement with it. So anyway, that was my little talk. 5 artworks, and yeah, what I really hope comes out of this is just think about think about the artworks that you love, and if you really love them, take some time tonight when you get home from Marfa or whatever, and just look deeply about them, and think about what makes you love them. What is inherent in these artworks that you love? And if you're an artist, you know, I mean, think about how to apply that to your own works. And if you're a collector, think about how to verbalize and communicate that with the other people in the space so that we can have these conversations that are just the spreading of pure joy, you know, without having to make any sort. I don't need to make most of these artworks, I know probably most people never heard of before. I know, like, and I'm not trying to be like edgy, like a hipster, you know, like showing these some obscure B-cut artworks. It's just that, like, it just didn't matter. Like, it just didn't matter. And so I hope that everybody kind of takes away from that. Thank you very much.